Admiral Vexthor stood at the command deck of the celestial hegemony's flagship, the Eternal Dawn, his four eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. The massive vessel, stretching 20 kilometers from bow to stern, represented the pinnacle of the hegemony's military might. Yet, for the first time in his 300-year career, he felt uneasy. "Impossible," he whispered, his scaled skin shifting colors from its usual confident gold to an anxious blue-green. "Run the scan again." The sensor officer, a younger member of their species, complied without question. "Confirmed, Admiral. One vessel. Unknown configuration. No known match in our database of 10 million documented ship designs." The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, methodically cataloging and conquering every spacefaring race they encountered. Their database contained the records of countless civilizations, including those they had systematically erased from existence. Among these was humanity, or so they had believed. "Magnify," Vexthor commanded. The hologram zoomed in on the object of their attention. A sleek vessel barely 2 kilometers long, its hull composed of a material that seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars. No visible weapons, no apparent shield emitters. And yet, "Sir, energy readings are unusual," the science officer reported, her tendrils twitching in confusion. "The ship appears to be generating more power than a small star, but we can't identify the source." Vexthor's membrane ridges furrowed. Humanity had been deemed extinct after the Great Purge 50 years ago. Their worlds had been reduced to ash, their fleets scattered and destroyed. The few survivors had flowed into unknown space, never to be seen again. Or so the official records claimed. "Open a channel," he ordered, more out of protocol than expectation. The hegemony didn't negotiate. They demanded submission or dealt destruction. But something about this lone vessel demanded caution. Static filled the command deck speakers, then resolved into a clear, calm voice. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Defiant. We've been expecting you." The admission sent a chill through Vexthor's spine. Humans weren't supposed to have survived, let alone develop technology that could evade their detection networks. "This sector belongs to the celestial hegemony. Your presence here is a violation of imperial law. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." A soft laugh echoed through the channel. "Admiral, I suspect you've already scanned us thoroughly. You've noticed our power signature. You've tried to classify our hull material. And I'm certain you've attempted to target our vital systems. How's that working out?" Vexthor's skin rippled with irritation. She was right. Their most advanced targeting systems couldn't lock onto any part of the vessel. It was as if the ship existed in a different layer of reality. "I command a fleet of 10,000 ships," he declared, gesturing to the massive armada surrounding his flagship, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. "Whatever technological advantage you believe you possess." "Numbers," Chen interrupted, "can be deceiving. Just as your empire was deceived about humanity's fate. We didn't flee into unknown space. Admiral, we evolved. What you see before you isn't just a ship. It's 50 years of preparation for this moment." Vexthor had heard enough. "All ships, battle formation Delta 7. Target the human vessel with all available weapons. Let's remind them why the hegemony has ruled unopposed for 10 millennia." The command deck erupted into activity as orders were relayed across the fleet. 10,000 ships moved in perfect synchronization, their weapon systems charging, shields harmonizing into an impenetrable wall of energy. "Final warning, human," Vexthor announced. "Surrender or be destroyed." "You still don't understand," Chen replied, her voice carrying a note of pity. "We're not here to surrender. We're here to show you why humanity never needed numbers to survive. Defiant, activate the Void Protocol." As the words left her lips, Vexthor watched in horror as the human ship began to emit a soft, pulsing light. His skin turned pure white, the color of absolute terror in his species. Because in that moment, he realized the truth. They hadn't found a lost human ship. The lost human ship had found them. The Defiant's hull shimmered like liquid starlight as the Hegemony fleet opened fire. Millions of energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum warheads converged on the lone human vessel, enough firepower to shatter a small moon. Admiral Vexthor watched with practiced detachment, expecting to see the ship vanish in a spectacular explosion. Instead, the impossible happened. Every weapon impact simply disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed. The attacks ceased to exist the moment they approached the Defiant's hull. The science officer's instruments went wild, trying to make sense of the phenomenon. "Sir," she reported, her voice trembling, "the energy readings, they're not showing any impact signature. It's as if our weapons are entering some kind of void." Captain Chen's voice returned, calm as ever. "You're partially correct. We call it quantum displacement technology. Simply put, your attacks aren't hitting us. They're being redirected to another dimension entirely." Vexthor's secondary hearts began beating faster. In 10,000 years of hegemony dominance, no civilization had developed anything remotely similar. Impossible. Such technology violates fundamental laws of physics. "The laws you know," Chen corrected. "When your empire drove us from our homes, we didn't just hide. We studied. We learned. The universe is far stranger than your science suggests, Admiral." As if to demonstrate her point, the Defiant began to move, not with the conventional thrust of engines, but by seemingly folding space around itself. It appeared simultaneously in multiple locations within the Hegemony formation, causing chaos as ships tried to track its actual position. "Target all possible locations," Vexthor commanded, his legendary composure cracking. "Launch autonomous hunter-killer drones. Deploy the quantum mesh." The fleet responded instantly, filling space with a web of advanced targeting systems and self-guided weapons. The Hegemony had conquered thousands of civilizations with this strategy, overwhelming force combined with predictive AI targeting. But the Defiant wasn't playing by their rules. Each drone that approached the human ship simply winked out of existence. The quantum mesh, designed to trap vessels in normal space, passed through the Defiant as if it were a hologram. And all the while, Captain Chen's ship continued its impossible dance through their formation. "Fascinating defensive network," Chen commented, sounding genuinely interested. "In another time, we might have struggled against it. But we've learned to think differently about space, time, and matter itself." The Defiant suddenly materialized directly in front of the Eternal Dawn. At this range, Vexthor could see the ship's hull clearly through the command deck's viewport. It wasn't reflecting starlight. It was bending it, creating patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. "What are you?" he demanded, all pretense of superiority gone. "We are humanity's response to extinction," Chen replied. "When you destroyed our worlds, you taught us an important lesson. Conventional warfare was a dead end. So we looked beyond, into quantum mechanics, string theory, dimensional engineering. We turned our entire civilization into a research project." The Defiant's hull began to pulse with a deep, resonant energy that set every instrument on the Eternal Dawn into emergency mode. Vexthor watched in growing horror as sections of his fleet began to disappear, ship by ship, leaving behind only empty space. "What's happening to my ships?" he demanded. "They're being relocated," Chen explained, "to a pocket dimension we created. Don't worry, their crews will be safe. Unlike your empire, we don't believe in unnecessary destruction. But we do believe in making statements." Vexthor's skin had turned completely white now, a sign of absolute terror in his species. The Defiant wasn't just a ship, it was a demonstration of power beyond their comprehension. And suddenly, he understood why the humans had waited 50 years to return. They hadn't been hiding. They had been transcending. As another wave of ships vanished from normal space, Chen's voice carried a note of finality. "Consider this a formal notice, Admiral. Humanity is no longer running, and we're no longer the same species you thought you destroyed." The Defiant's hull began to emit a new frequency, one that made reality itself seem to vibrate. And as Vexthor watched his mighty fleet disappear ship by ship, he realized that the age of hegemony dominance was about to end, not with a battle, but with a revelation. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had evolved beyond the very concepts of conventional warfare. Alarms blared throughout the eternal dawn as Admiral Vexthor watched his fleet vanish section by section. 7,000 ships gone, transported to some unknown dimensional pocket by technology that shouldn't exist. His remaining crews were panicking, their disciplined formation crumbling as primal fear overtook their training. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, voice cracking, "we've lost contact with the entire 7th and 3rd battle groups. The dimensional distortions are spreading in a geometric pattern." Vexthor's membrane ridges pulsed with barely controlled rage. In all his centuries of service, he'd never faced an enemy he couldn't at least understand. But this defied everything the hegemony knew about physics, about warfare, about humanity itself. "Captain Chen," he broadcast, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your point is made. Name your terms." The response came not through the communication channels, but directly into the minds of everyone on the command deck. "Terms." Chen's voice echoed in their thoughts. "You misunderstand, Admiral. This isn't a negotiation. It's an education." The Defiant shifted again, its hull rippling with patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves. New energy signatures began emanating from the vessel, completely different from the dimensional displacement field. The readings made even less sense than before. "Impossible," the science officer whispered, her tendrils writhing in distress. "The ship is generating quantum entanglement fields at a macro scale. They're rewriting local physics." Vexthor watched in horror as space itself began to warp around his remaining ships. Light bent in impossible ways, creating corridors of distorted reality that trapped vessels in bubbles of altered space-time. His mighty fleet, the pride of the hegemony, was being reduced to a collection of helpless observers. "When you destroyed our worlds," Chen's voice continued in their minds, "you assumed we would either die or remain scattered refugees. But humanity has always been at its most dangerous when pushed to the brink. We didn't just rebuild, we reimagined what was possible." The Defiant's hull suddenly became transparent, revealing layers of technology that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Structures that folded through space in ways that made Vexthor's eyes hurt to look at them. "We abandoned traditional concepts of spacecraft design," Chen explained, almost professionally. "Why build weapons when you can simply alter the laws of physics in your favor? Why develop better shields when you can exist partially outside normal spacetime? Everything you see is the result of 50 years of thinking beyond conventional limitations." Another wave of ships vanished, bringing the total losses to nearly 8,000 vessels. The remaining crews were broadcasting panic on all frequencies, their centuries of conditioning crumbling in the face of something they couldn't fight or even comprehend. "Admiral," his executive officer whispered, "we're receiving surrender requests from our own ships. They're breaking formation." Vexthor's skin shifted through patterns of color that hadn't been seen in his species for generations, the marks of absolute existential terror. The hegemony had built its empire on the certainty of its superiority, on the absolute truth of its technological and military dominance. But now, your empire is built on a foundation of fear. Chen's voice resonated in their minds. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, fear of change itself. But humanity, we embraced the unknown. We made uncertainty our ally. And now we're going to show you what real change looks like. The Defiant began to multiply, creating perfect copies of itself that existed simultaneously in slightly different phases of reality. Each copy emitted new forms of energy that the hegemony sensors couldn't even classify. It wasn't just a display of power, it was a demonstration of how far behind their civilization had fallen. "Please," Vexthor found himself saying, all pretense of command authority gone. "What do you want from us?" The answer came not in words, but in images that flooded their minds. Visions of burning worlds, of civilizations crushed under the hegemony's boot, of cultures erased and species driven to extinction. Then, overlaying these horrors, new images appeared, of cooperation, of shared discovery, of a galaxy where power meant responsibility rather than dominance. "We want you to understand," Chen's voice echoed finally, "that the age of empires is over. The galaxy is about to change, Admiral. The only question is whether the hegemony will change with it, or join the obsolete relics of history." As the last words faded from their minds, Vexthor realized that this wasn't just a military defeat, it was the end of everything his civilization had built itself upon. And somehow, that was more terrifying than any weapon humanity could have deployed. The breaking point hadn't been reached through force. It had been achieved through revelation. The command deck of the Eternal Dawn had fallen silent. Admiral Vexthor stood among his crew, watching as reality itself seemed to unravel around them. The remaining 2,000 ships of his once mighty fleet hung motionless in space, trapped in bubbles of altered physics, while the Defiance copies danced between dimensions around them. "You know what truly defeated the hegemony today, Admiral." Captain Chen's voice echoed in their minds again. "Not our technology, not our tactics. It was your own certainty, your absolute conviction that you knew everything worth knowing about the universe." The Defiance copies suddenly merged back into a single vessel, but now it seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, its hull both solid and transparent, present and absent, a visual paradox that defied comprehension. "When you drove us from our homes," Chen continued, "we could have hidden in the darkness of space. We could have rebuilt our fleets, developed bigger weapons, stronger shields. We could have become you. Instead, we chose to become something else entirely." Images began appearing in the minds of every hegemony crew member, not just on the Eternal Dawn, but throughout the entire fleet. They saw humanity's journey, the initial devastation, the scattered refugees, the moment of collective decision that changed everything. "We abandoned the concept of traditional spacecraft," Chen explained, her words accompanied by visions of impossible engineering. "We stopped thinking in terms of weapons and defenses. Instead, we asked ourselves, why play by the rules of conventional physics when we could rewrite them entirely?" The Defiance hull rippled, revealing layers of technology that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Structures that weren't built so much as grown, technology that blurred the line between organic and artificial, matter and energy, possibility and reality. "Your civilization has spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of destruction." Chen's voice resonated. "We spent 50 years learning to transcend the very concept of conflict. The ship you see before you isn't a weapon. It's a key to understanding the universe in ways your empire never imagined possible." Vexthor watched as sections of his remaining fleet began to reappear, but changed. Their weapons had been transformed into sensors, their armor into communication arrays. The ships were being rewritten at the quantum level, transformed from instruments of war into tools of exploration. What are you doing to them?" he managed to ask, his skin cycling through patterns of confusion and awe. "Showing you an alternative," Chen replied. "Your empire was built on the principle that power comes from the ability to destroy. We're showing you that true power lies in the ability to transform, to adapt, to evolve beyond your limitations." The Defiance suddenly projected a holographic display that filled the space around every hegemony vessel. It showed thousands of galaxies, billions of stars, and untold mysteries waiting to be explored. "This is what you've been missing." Chen's voice softened. "While your empire was busy conquering known space, entire dimensions remained unexplored. While you perfected the art of destruction, you missed the chance to understand the true nature of reality itself." The transformation of the fleet continued, ship by ship, but now Vexthor noticed something else. The crews weren't panicking anymore. Instead, they were watching in fascination as their vessels became something new, something that resonated with a part of their species they had forgotten long ago. Your ancestors, Chen revealed, were explorers before they were conquerors. We found records of their early civilization in the dimensional archives. Beings driven by curiosity rather than conquest. Somewhere along the way, you lost that part of yourselves. The final ships of the fleet completed their transformation, and for the first time in his long life, Vexthor felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth: wonder. The weapons that had defined his existence were gone, replaced by instruments that promised to unlock the secrets of the universe. "This is your reckoning, Admiral," Chen concluded, "not through destruction, but through revelation. The question now is, will your empire choose to remember who you once were, or will you cling to who you became?" As the words faded from their minds, Vexthor realized that humanity hadn't just defeated them, they had offered them salvation. The real reckoning wasn't with humanity's power. It was with their own potential for change. Admiral Vexthor stood before the Hegemony's High Council, his scaled skin shimmering with colors that had no name in their language. The ancient chamber, designed to intimidate with its towering architecture and shadows, seemed somehow smaller now, more finite, more limited than before. "You mean to tell us," Supreme Counselor Orcs hissed, "that a single human vessel not only neutralized our greatest fleet, but transformed our ships into research vessels?" "No, Counselor," Vexthor replied, his voice steady. "They transformed more than our ships. They transformed our understanding of what's possible." The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber activated, showing the Defiant in all its impossible glory. The ship hung in space like a question mark in reality's fabric, its hull still shifting between states of matter that shouldn't coexist. "Captain Chen has requested to address the council," Vexthor announced, causing a ripple of murmurs through the ancient chamber. "Not through traditional channels, but through what they call quantum consciousness interface." Before the council could object, their minds filled with the now familiar presence of the human captain. But this time, she brought with her visions of something greater than military might or technological supremacy. "Honorable Council," Chen's thoughts resonated. "Your empire stands at a crossroads. For 10,000 years, you've expanded through force, believing it was the only path to power. We're here to show you another way." The chamber's holographic space erupted with images of dimensions beyond normal spacetime, of civilizations that existed in parallel to their own, of technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than rules. "Humanity didn't just survive your purge," Chen continued. "We transcended it. We discovered that the universe is far more vast, far more strange, and far more wonderful than anyone imagined. And now we're offering you the chance to discover it with us." The council members watched in stunned silence as the display showed their transformed fleet, now equipped with technologies that could pierce the veil between dimensions. Ships that had once carried planet-killing weapons now carried instruments capable of communicating with civilizations that existed outside normal spacetime. "Your empire was built on the premise that power comes from dominance." Chen's voice echoed. "We're offering you a new premise, that true power comes from understanding, not just of technology or physics, but of the infinite possibilities that exist beyond the boundaries of conventional thought." Zarix, his ancient face marked with the patterns of deep thought, finally spoke. "And if we refuse this offer, then you'll be left behind," Chen replied simply. "The galaxy is changing. The barriers between dimensions are thinning. New forms of life, new civilizations, new ways of existing are emerging. You can either be part of this evolution or become relics of a bygone age." The council chamber erupted in discussion, but Vexthor noticed something remarkable. The patterns on his fellow hegemony members' skin were shifting to colors he hadn't seen in generations, the colors of curiosity, of wonder, of possibility. "We offer you not surrender," Chen concluded, "but transcendence. Not subjugation, but partnership. The choice, as always, remains yours." As her presence faded from their minds, Vexthor watched the council members carefully. The ancient patterns of conquest and dominance were being replaced by something new, something that reminded him of the historical records of their species' early days, when they had looked to the stars with wonder rather than hunger. Supreme Counselor Zarix rose slowly, his skin displaying patterns that hadn't been seen in the chamber for millennia. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "it is time for a new dawn, not of empire, but of exploration." The vote that followed was unprecedented in its unanimity. The hegemony would change, not because they were defeated, but because they were shown a greater truth. Their empire of conquest would become an empire of discovery. As Vexthor left the chamber, he looked once more at the hologram of the Defiant, the ship that had brought not destruction, but transformation. Not an end, but a beginning. Humanity hadn't just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. They had changed the meaning of power itself.